Okay, render is complete and we can watch its details. I've already found a couple of unpleasant moments that I will have to fix, I think, to re-render regions. As you know, I'm recording the masterclass in real time without any preparation, so there are some errors, which is even good actually, because we can see how to solve issues. Not just watching the plastic masterclass where everything is just so smooth. The first thing I dislike is soil. There are a few stones here. They're arranged in a good way, but in general, the scene misses glass, leaves, details. I want to add more sticks, more garbage. I think that will increase the generation of scatters in render with region. So that's one thing. Second, of course, these rocks in the foreground have disappointed me greatly. To be honest, they look bad. All this garbage here didn't add much realism. Doesn't look nice at all. And I'll have to remove it. And most probably, we'll do matte paint in the foreground. We'll make Photoshop rocks, find something suitable online. The landscape seemed too simple to me. We have to make it more complicated. This is what we're gonna do now. I will now make these amendments on scatters. I don't think that you'll see anything brand new. I will only show how to increase detailing of this soil and make it more natural, if I can say so. All right, let's start then. I'll save render, just in case, as CXR, to save possibility if rendering it with region, choosing Corona CXR and saving it in the render folder. I'm gonna call it Forest House. Now let's move to soil and I'll add some details. Some plants, remake this soil. Alright, switching this proxy to the display mode. Solid bounding box, and pressing freeze to remove garbage. Alright, it looks like these plants look good, but I will shift them a bit. Now, making soil more complex. For this, I will add Edit Poly. And I'm going to choose a part of polygons that are in the foreground and are captured directly by the camera. For my 3D Max, not freezing, scatter's not updating, I think I'll apply Alt-Q and isolate the highlighting. For this surface, the tessellate function as well. That is, I will divide it by a greater number of polygons. To increase detailing, and we'll use a simple method. We'll apply the displacement modifier and the 3D Max modifier, not Corona. For this we have to take bitmap texture, and we'll take this texture from the aerial displacement compilation. I think that if my students are watching my masterclass, you already know this method, nothing new here. Taking some map in the real displacement compilation, for example rock, In fact, any heights map will do. For example, such a one. It looks like this. And we'll stamp it out a bit from this surface. For this, without removing highlight from polygons, I'm using the displacement modifier. It's called the same. Displace, and we'll assign this texture to map. Okay, and now we can change the stamping force as we want. I think this way will fit. Here we have some tension. It's not a problem because all this surface is already underwater. It already looks more interesting. Yes, now the soil looks better. We now have hillocks and bumps. Alright, now for the grass. You see that I'm rather at ease in this scene. So each scatter is near its object, which are being generated. Choosing scatter, and maybe I made max count 1.5 million. Hope that my 3D Max won't play up on render. Sticks, branches, all this stuff should be doubled, I think. Although there are too many stones. Okay, I'll leave it as is. I'll better add more leaves with separate scatter. In order to highlight all leaves conveniently, as they're all represented by different objects, we can do the following. Collect them in one separate layer, creating a new layer, and highlighted objects will immediately fall into this layer, calling it leaves. Then let's create multi-scatter. And then let's go ahead and add objects. Choosing a list, choosing the layer leaves, and adding objects from this layer. Now adding the surface. Then border spline, leaving max count as is. Let it be like a carpet. Look, if you have border splines, set the higher count because it's counted in generation for the entire surface, not inside the spline. So we can increase the amount. Besides, let's keep in mind that displacement modifier works only with the current surface. So I'll add values from 10 to 10 centimeters to the move parameter, and set the standard random rotate parameter to 360. I won't change scale. The only moment generation also takes place in some scatter points, so the parameter random seed should be changed. I won't add the mask. Let it be the carpet covering the surface of the soil, and it will look cooler. To make it look even more interesting, we can apply scatter for higher detailing to the house stairs. I highlighted these stairs and highlighted these leaves. Now, isolating them together with highlight. Otherwise, Advanced Painter will not work. So here I'm adding leaves, and all this is going to be generated quickly with highlighted stairs and leaves. There we go, distributing objects. They're falling down a bit, I think, because they have pivots too low, but that's not a problem. Advanced Painter doesn't work as fast as I'd like, so I will throw some leaves manually. Leaves are usually located on the ends. I think it will look cool this way. They fell down a bit, but I'm just gonna lift them. I think I might be too much concerned with details, but let it be like this. Also, I plan to add some plants here, and I want more diversity. I want to add ferns that I forgot about. I already have downloaded plants in Megascans Bridge. We can take these ones and these ones. And by the way, we can add dry branches as well. But I'm disappointed by the look on the rocks. So I'll be adding them in Photoshop. But for training, why not? So I'll launch Megascans on MS Live Link. Otherwise, nothing's gonna work. I'm leaving the surface, the rocks, isolating the rest to avoid slowdown. Now let's take these dry branches. Let's go ahead and export. All right, so I'll transfer all of this to Megascans layer. Ideally, I'd have to add rocks there, but I'm not gonna do that. Changing the mesh color, making the full mesh display mode for the rock, and working with new objects. We can act with scatters, create scatter, assign it to the surface as the area limiter. For the area where these objects should be, we can make a separate Corona distance map. And this distance map will assign proxy to us. But that's actually too complicated and long process. So it's easier to do this manually. And so let's go ahead and do it. There are all these settings already. We'll set around 10 centimeters between objects, and that will do. And we'll add these dry plants here. Just don't be too enthusiastic. We also have ferns, so let's take these. There are 6 of them there. All right, let's change their color. Plants from Megascans are convenient because the plants are low poly and use alpha channel maps, so we can use Advanced Painter to arrange them in the scene without any optimization and transfer the proxy. Let's add a couple more. And I guess we'll stop there. I'll exit the isolated highlight and render with region the piece which we were changing. That is, it will be the image lower part. Of course, I'm not going to record the render process video, but for statistics, let's check the time spent on rendering of the previous image. For 2 hours and 30 minutes. So these changes will be calculated approximately within 1 hour. Highlighting the region. And launching the render. The render has been calculated. The time is 2:27, but ideally we could set the lower number of passes around 30 runs, and image would look rather good and clear because the noise is scarcely observable even at such magnification. So we could save time on render. This way, when increasing image resolution, we can freely decrease the number of passes. So let's check render elements. It's fine. I only forgot one thing, one very important render element, which is Z-depth, to add some depth to the image. But that's not a problem. I'll now save the image in CSR, where I'll have all render passes. And I'll also add one Z-depth render element, and we'll render without the final image, only the passes. This process will run rather quickly, and while the render element is calculated, we'll already be working in Photoshop. This way, we're going to save some time. To make the correct Z-depth, I need to measure the closest point to the camera to the furthest point in the scene. So I will now use the standard type measurement tool, and I'm going to measure the distance approximately to this point. And we have around 35 meters. So that means we can freely set 3500. So I'm entering render elements and adding a new render element. Z-depth, here it is, geometry Z-depth, and in max Z parameters, setting the value that we obtained while measuring with a ruler, which was 3500. Then we're going to enter scene settings and check the render only mask parameter. We're going to render masks only. Switching back to the camera, and I'm not going to change anything here, and let's launch render again, see what we get. Now while render is running, I can already open our CXR and save all render elements that were saved in CXR format. Here's the render that was calculated. This is what I'll do. Pressing save all. I'm going to save it all to the folders, render folder. I can save as PNG, choosing this format, pressing save 8-bit, and saving alpha channel. All right. Okay, the render process is running, and of course BeautyPass is not rendering, but we have all the remaining render passes and ZDepth is rendering. Now, of course, it's my fault to have forgotten about this render element, but it happens when one is working on the move. So let's not waste time and think what we can do with the rocks. The problem is that these rocks from Megascans don't look really good when we zoom them in, and these rounded edges are somewhat distorted. Of course, we could leave that unchanged, but that's not very professional. So I want to show you what we can do in such case, if we have such a problem, and how to solve this situation. The first idea crossing my mind is Photoshop rocks. We just need to select appropriate ones. If you remember, we have masks for these rocks, so there won't be any problem. Let's search. We can check out textures.com. It has the best photos. The only downer is that it's actually a paid resource, but it actually gives free points when you register. 15 points a day. And you can spend them, on anything you want. So let's go ahead and look for some rocks. So we need to find photos. Textures are not really useful, so photos are better. Like this one, maybe. Just a photo of the entire solid rock. The photo should be without the sun, without the sunlight, of course, because we have scattered lighting without the direct light source. So we're looking for some option, maybe cloudy shooting. I think that 1600 to 1079 will be enough. So let's go ahead and download this rock, and maybe there's something else. This one's also good. Even several. This one's too flat. So let's take this one. I don't know exactly what we're going to use for now, so I'm just downloading everything. This is not a bad option, but we have too much lichen of various kind. It's not appropriate. Here's a good option. This rock really suits well. We should also ensure that all our options are of the same kind, since if we're going to mix this option with this one, if we miss resolution and have to bond them together from different pieces, their structure should be more or less the same. This rock's very good. I think should be useful. Okay, while render is running, we'll launch Photoshop and start post-processing step by step. Pulling all the render elements at once through the file script menu. Load files in the stack, choosing all the render elements. And pressing OK. Here they are. All right, so the advantage here is that all the rendered elements are collected into one document just by layers. We don't have to drag or copy anything separately. Takes some time because of the resolution. Okay, so let's go ahead and look into our render. Let's see how clear is our Z-depth mask in principle. We don't have any noise, of course. I'm not satisfied with everything, but we're not going to use the Z-depth so actively in the foreground to make all these details visible. So I think we can stop render now and save the Z-depth mask separately. Okay, ready. As you see, my PNG files open without the sky, but it's not a problem. I have to replace the sky. And another render defect is contours. Ideally, we should check here at rendering. Check direct visible override and uncheck none here. I forgot about it, so we'll have to get rid of this contour effect in Photoshop. Of course, this all looks fatal against the black background, but we can fix this. Let's first collect render elements into one folder. Highlight all the layers, create a folder. I'm going to call it masks. Putting the folder on the top because we're going to use highlight. And now we need to select the sky. The original sky is just light with some slight transitions. I think we'll replace it in Photoshop to more detailed and picturesque. Let's Google it. I used to keep sky libraries, but it appeared easier to just Google something than searching in my own libraries. Google search is much faster and it's just easier. Concerning the sky photo editing, the sky hue should match the one in render. That is this hue. It shouldn't be too purple. So the sky like this, too bright, it's not going to fit. This one will fit very well actually, because of the same hue. So just in case, I'll save it. And I'm just going to look for something else. Maybe with some clouds. By the way, this option will look good. I'll take it. It has those complex clouds. Some light spots. Looks cool. All right, copy and paste it. Paste it here in Photoshop. And now pressing Alt to hide all the other layers and see where we have the horizon line in the scene. It passes somewhere along the lower third. It's good because the sky horizon should match the horizon of our render. All right, well, we have a pretty interesting sky now. It's lighter in our render, so we have to take this into account. We have to slightly change gamma. We have to fix this gamma a little bit. So applying the corrective layer curves, pressing Alt to specify the sky, and making it lighter. Make this curve to achieve lighter gamma. The most important thing is not to overcarry. Okay, looks good. I will not do any special color corrections because the sky color matches the render generally, but otherwise, of course, I'd use the curves or color balance. By the way, we can convert the layer to the smart object, but that's actually not too important in this particular case. Okay, moving forward, and let's move to rocks that I was so much concerned about. Let's take those, the ones I saved. I'll try these ones. I can take a lasso tool and make rough highlighting. We'll be correcting details on the go, because now we don't know how this rock will be, where this rock will be put, so there's no sense to highlight it now and to waste time. Okay, so looks pretty good if we extrapolate them a bit. And anyway, detailing of these stones is much better. Okay, so now we have to adjust illumination between these two rocks. The easiest way is to apply hue saturation correcting layer to the entire document, reducing saturation to 0. This will prevent distraction to color and allow us working exclusively with illumination, and we'll understand the extent of adjustment between these two objects. So then I'll put these stones into a folder. I'll call it stones and apply curves correcting layer to the layer, pressing Alt and specifying the layer for correction, which is this rock, and then lowering the curve until we achieve the same lighting for both rocks. And then we can apply fine settings, make the highlight brighter, shadows lighter. I think it's okay this way. Looks good. All right, so we're done with lighting. Now we're gonna work with color, deactivating saturation, and we see that this rock is more pink and this one's more blue. I think it would approach that color. I like it more. So I'll do some slight color correction. I'll create color balance specifying the lower layer. So I'm pressing Alt as well. Performing color adjustment. We need more blue. Adding yellow, reducing pink. Adding red. We can reduce some magenta. More or less like this. If we need to further improve color correction, we can use highlight, for example. And highlights for those too bright areas, for example, we could add more blue color. Correcting shadows, because the color is too green now. Right, here's a life hack. If your vision is blurred and you can't perceive your own image normally, you can expand it. In the menu, image rotation, horizontal flip. This way. Now we're looking at the picture with somewhat new eyes. Alright, now that it's fine, let's put the rock where it belongs. So first we should repeat the contour of this rock. So we'll be using the mask of these rocks. Masks are saved here. Let's find the one we need. This mask. Control A, Control C, copying, creating a new mask by pressing this button. Adding a mask, entering with Alt, editing, pressing Control V, inserting. There we go. Now we have the sky here. We don't need the sky, so I'm inverting this background with Control I and inserting the mask back. All these areas, I don't need them. The rock in 3D looks more or less good, so I'll just take a brush and remove it. Maybe I'll have to retouch it a bit. And let's see what we have now. Okay, the rock disappeared. We need to put it in place, but if I start moving it now, it will be moving together with the mask. We need to break the bond between the mask and the layer. Removing the change sign, switching to the layer, and moving the rock over here. And now I just have to find an optimal place, and I think that's gonna be like this. We're just missing a small piece here. Now I can use clone stamp for a piece here. But I don't need to be enthusiastic about clone stamp because it can be visible in the foreground. All right, now it looks nice. It looks better in the background already. And this photoshopped area still looks more interesting. We only need to add more pink. If we want, we can add some stone. Let's look for it. This one, for example. I'm just going to put it lower than this current layer. Let's see. It's going to look in terms of texture. You can see it's lit from the top. So we can try this way and apply color correction. Let's do as follows. Transfer these correcting layers over the folder and then press Alt to apply the style to the folder with stones. It's okay. Looks good. Still have to hide that stone in the background and correct the hue. I'm not gonna use the correcting layer. I'll just correct it live. It's absolutely okay now. I will have to apply the eraser tool here. I don't really like the general pink hue of the stones, so I'll correct that. Let's also work with far rocks. I think that when we reduce this purple hue, we'll understand what to do with the color of these rocks. We'll find the mask for rocks. Copy it, and I'll add the mask that I copied from the stones to channels to use it quickly. We have channels section, so I'll add a new channel there. Can't insert it somehow. Once again. There we go. Now, we're only concerned about stones in the distance. These we can remove. We'll work with rocks in the distance, and I will now download highlight from this channel just by clicking Ctrl. There we go. It's loading in the main layer as well. So we'll rename it. Let's call it main. And in order not to get confused, I'm pressing Ctrl J and a new layer with these stones is created. I can also transfer them to the folder with other stones, but then correcting layers will be active in them. And I don't need that. I need a separate color correction. So I'll make a separate folder and I'll call it stones background. Minimizing layer with these stones, minimizing masks as well. And I'll make the main layer with the yellow backlight for orientation. And using color balance, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this pink hue. I'll make the hue colder. It will look better. Let's see the difference, how it was what it is now. I think it's much better now. We can edit these stones again using color balance. Make it more blue. All right, that's fine. So what else should we improve? Right, so this stone remained pink, apparently, because we didn't apply the mask. So we'll fix that. I'm going to copy this stone from the main layer and transfer it to the folder and merge these two layers. I'll do this way. It's correct now. Of course, the layer arrangement matters, otherwise the color starts resetting. And I also wanted to make the stones darker from below to avoid shining, to make them darker, to create shadows. There's an easy way to achieve this. We can add another correction layer for main stones. Curves. By trial and error, let's see what we get. Curves will influence the layer with stones fully, but following the mask. That is, we first invert the mask with Ctrl-I, and now I use the brush and white color to draw the mask, and to color the lower part of stones a little bit. Now, of course, the mask looks a bit rough if we look at it through Alt. We can detailize it a bit. It doesn't really matter. The most important thing is to achieve the effect, to make it look fine. And I will probably also reduce opacity in this correction layer. All right, looks good. Let's expand this image. And we're now experiencing glitches with layers. All right, we'll work as is for now. The next thing to be corrected is the soil and the grass. The grass is too bright, too intensively green, and soil is very light. We have to adjust its hue to the rocks to make it look more natural. So color correction here is rather simple. We have a separate mask for soil. We'll fix water as well. I'll copy this layer to channels in a similar way. No need to copy the sky. And so further, we're working with soil in a similar way, uploading highlight from alpha channel for soil, Ctrl J, putting into a separate folder. I'll call it ground. And I'll be correcting, first making the hue darker. We can use this correction layer at once to understand the soil intensity. It should be a bit lighter, but just a little bit. In terms of hue, I think I'll remove some green. I'll try to do this directly in curves to decrease the green channel a bit. Looks normal. Let's see if everything's okay without or with correction. The only thing that I doubt about it is the shore, but all this can be fixed. Now for the grass, it's pretty much the same. I didn't do a separate mask for grass. It's not a problem, we'll do it now with the wire color. This gray color here, it's a bit of a problem. The point about the grass is that it should be more or less similar to trees in hue and in contrast. This is what we actually want to achieve by making it darker. It used to be lighter, now it looks better. I'd also add a bit more yellow. And I'm not going to be enthusiastic about it. I only have to correct water now. And I also want to correct trees. I don't want them to be so saturated. I have to remove the toxic kind of hue a little bit. So for this, I'm choosing the tree mask, leaving unchanged in the background and correcting in the foreground. Color range. We can place the layer with trees higher above the rocks, just in case. Color balance. Let's try to make it brighter. Make it look more interesting. Choosing curves. All right, now we have this cool contrast. And we're gonna compare it with and without curves. Came directly to the foreground. Shining. I'll decrease the effect a bit, make it less obvious. Okay, ready. And I don't really like that green water. This green hue should be removed as well. This is the last object for color correction. We have a layer with water. By the way, many of you might ask, why don't you copy the entire layer and add the mask there? I think that it's not too good because such PSD files will be rather heavy.